Okay, so as you can see now, we have spiked the entire exit end of the switch back to the point where the point rails get spiked. Now from here we're going to move down to the entrance of the switch, and we're going to spike the last two ties on this switch and get that part finished up, and then we'll do the point area, and I'll show you how we do that. Okay, so we've spiked in the first two ties here, and so the entrance of our switch is engaged, and we on all the tie snap gauges have been removed from the switch. We no longer need those. Now you can see that PC board strip is under a position right here, and the reason for that is because if you look down in between the rails, it's the last place that I can put spikes on the inside and the outside. Down here there's not room, nor here, and so what we're going to do is we're going to actually drill a hole through the outside to hold this rail in place both directions, and I'll show you that in a second. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to check to make sure that this bend and that bend match each other, engage all the way through, and we'll make some tweaks to it if we need to, as well as the straight side and this point rail. And so the way we do that is we do one at a time. One of the first things I want to make sure we do is get this rail properly bent at the very end so that it matches up to the rail pocket. And the way I do that is I put a small bend right there out to the point. So you can see the gap in there is closed up a little bit. It's very difficult to see that bend. But if you look down the rail, you can see now that it lines up with the entrance section. And that's what I meant about having that small bend down there, is it's really important to get this side of the rail lined up with this. So when your train comes through, there is no bobbling going on right through here. Now we're going to do the same thing over here, although I think that rail is pretty much ready to go right now. We got a good clearance there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to check the gauge between the curves. And the way we do that is I use a couple little spacers. Okay, so I've put a spacer in here just to hold this rail away. Gives me some room. And what I'm going to use is, this is a gauge made by Old Pullman. This one works really well because you can see it's got two tabs down here. There's one there and one there. The outside of these tabs represent the back-to-back spacing of the flanges. And if you have proper clearance there, you should have no trouble going through the switch. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this gauge and we're going to set it down in here, and you can see on that side I've got probably 1/16 of an inch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk this through this curve, and you can see the gap over there. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it stays about 1/16 of an inch. In other words, you get a little bit of side play going through the curve. You actually want it a little wider through here, because if you're running a locomotive that has like 6 to 8 drive wheels, and if they're all flanged and they don't have sideways compliance in them, they could hang up in here. And so a little extra room kind of eliminates some of that. So this side looks really good. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this over to the other side now. Okay, so I've moved this over. This clip here I just put on there just to keep the rail over to the side, so when I'm gauging. And again, you can see we're sliding right down there. We got plenty of room. On the straight side, you don't have to have the extra room, because as the drivers go through this part, it won't make any difference. So it looks like the gauge is good there. Now what I'm going to do is take these and separate the point rails so we can get in here and nail. Okay, so you can see I've got the spacers in here, and you can use anything. You can take a little piece of 3/8 inch tie or a chunk of wood or anything and stick them in there. It's just, all it's doing is giving me room in here to work with the spiker tool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to where I've put in my PC board strip, and I'm going to start working from here, and then I'm going to go back up to where we started. These three right here, and then I'll come back to that one and that one. And then I'll show you how we do these last two down here when you can't spike on the inside. So in spiking this section here, we're going to start here, and I'm only going to put 4 spikes on this rail and this tie, and back here on this rail and this tie. The point rails don't get nailed at this point because they've got to remain flexible. Okay, so now you can see all of these ties up here have been spiked both on the outer, the straight rail, and then on the curved rail inside here on both sides. And that leaves the point rails flexible enough to work with any switch throw out there. With the exception of maybe some of the LGB electric switch throws, because they don't have very much power at all. But when these are tied together, the spring motion in them tend to do a little canceling, and so they work well together. And I'll show you how the tie bar gets mounted on these. The tie bar is included in your kit along with some brass pins. So right now we're going to fasten these two ties here only on the outside, and the way we do that is we drill a small hole on the back side here, the back side there, and then on this side we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go on the back side there and the back side there. And we're also going to drill holes here and here and on the other side for 4 screws that are included in your kit to hold the header ties. These are the long ones that your throw will get mounted to. And while we're marking holes, we're also going to put a hole in the center here on the point rail, and also one on the other point rail on the inside. And we're going to mark all those at one time, and we'll drill them all at one time, and then we'll go back and drill these a little larger because the screws included in your kit are just a little larger than the spikes. So you can see right now all the snap gauges have been removed. The whole exit end of the switch is complete. So this device is just a little pocket punch. It's one of those that you push down and it pops and leaves a little mark. And so I'm going to go ahead and mark the rail and the ties. It's a little hard to see, but I'll go ahead and get all these done. You can see the little mark right there. All right, and that's where I'm going to be drilling. Okay, so I've gone ahead and center punched all the holes, and you can see the holes there and there. These holes are a little larger now because there's going to be screws going through there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and push the ties back in. When you're drilling holes, you want to make sure you pull the ties out of the way. I leave them in while I'm drilling these holes just so this doesn't get forced down and bend it. So we'll go ahead and get these back in position here. Now you'll notice that the holes on this tie and this tie, which are the shorter ones, are spaced towards the back. So one spike will come with the head facing out towards me, and then the spike next to it will be facing inwards. And this will keep the rail from moving, so it keeps engaged. Now on the header ties where the screws go, I put the hole in the center mainly because the screw is much bigger. I pilot drill it and before I put the screws in. And also that way, if you want to put the header ties on the other side, you can simply unscrew them, turn them around, and they should fit reasonably well the other direction. So I'll go ahead and put the spikes and the screws in, and we'll move on. So as you can see from here, the hole's drilled in the foot of the rail, and the spike is put in backwards and then bent over the foot. This captures the rail. The other spike is there mainly for looks, but it also helps hold down the rail as well. So it only takes 2 spikes on this portion of it, because if you look on the inside, you'll see that there is no spikes there. So now down at this end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pilot drill into the tie material where those 4 holes are, 2 on this side, 2 on the other side, for the screws, and I'll go ahead and put those in. So one of the tools that I make a lot of use out of is this. It's made by Dremel, and it's a variable speed portable Dremel tool. And it doesn't come with this chuck assembly on the end, so you can purchase those separately. But it makes it real nice for installing very small drills, and I use this all the time on the railroad, not only building switches, but also pinning the rail joiners in between sections of track. And so this would be a great investment. I believe this was $76, and it comes with the charging base. And I've been using this one for several years now, and it's excellent. It works really good. Okay, so the 4 screws that are put in the header ties are in now, and they're number 1 screws, about 3/8 of an inch long. The switch is now completely spiked and is ready to be pulled out of the jig, and I usually use a small little pry bar and just gently lift in a couple different areas here, and the switch will come right out of the jig. And so there you have it, a complete switch already spiked. Now we're going to go ahead and trim the ends of the switch because the rails that come in your kit are a little longer than what's needed. So before we actually cut the ends, we're going to mark this so that we get a mark 1/2 inch out from the end of the tie, and this leaves plenty of room for the microengineering rail joiners. So aluminum rail can be cut with a small razor saw, a fine-tooth hacksaw. I happen to use an electric bandsaw just because it's quicker, and then I buff the ends of the rail. So I'm going to go do that now.